All right, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of SuperFreq. How are we doing? I actually couldn't decide on today's podcast if I wanted to do an extension of the polyamory Substack that I wrote and how repulsed I am by that whole dynamic, but I think I kind of did a thorough enough job on that. So if you're interested to know how I really feel about that and the patterns and the forensic dynamics behind how these things manifest, go check that Substack out. But instead, I want to talk today about boundaries and what they actually look like, how to establish them, the implications somatically of what happens to the body when we don't. And then I want to do like a bonus extension at the end of those who fall into very specific types of archetypes. Like there's three main archetypes that I'm seeing right now in the field and in the collective. And those are the types of folks that you kind of want to have your spidey senses up for and really utilize those boundaries around. So, that being said, how is everybody feeling just tuning in? How are you handling the acceleration of time, the acceleration of technology? It's happening so fast. Everything is happening so fast. I'm getting a massive up level. SuperFreq is getting a massive up level. People that I'm working with are getting a massive up level. And it's one thing to see and perceive these things happening like months later or years later, but to see them happen and experience them in real time, almost exactly how you've seen them, is pretty wild. So, some of you have been with me and working with me for a couple of years, and I want you just to reflect on how much you've changed in the short period of time that we've worked together, whether or not you're new or you've been with me since the inception of SuperFreq, or you've been with me even before that when I had my agency and my personal brand agency, and I was helping you all build wildly beautiful businesses that felt more aligned to you. Like, look how much you've changed and how much you've grown. And when I say that it's a law of like commensurate, uh, average, meaning like the little things that you do every single day, how present you are to your body and your decisions, and how much you stack this work and how much you continue to like invest in yourself, whether or not that's emotionally, spiritually, taking content like this that isn't, that's free, that I don't have a paywall on, and just letting that reverberate into your system. Just look how much you've changed. Like some of the emails that I've been able to field from you guys that tell me as much has been so motivating for me. I never know how this is gonna, move into the field or pulse into the field, and to get the reverberation back from you guys in terms of feedback and emails means a lot. It keeps me going, especially when I know that there's big up levels and changes, and even when I can't see it all the way yet, I'm just guided and told to go places and I don't even know why. I have so much resistance always to the journey I'm on right now. All of it has been like me stepping into contrary action against my logic. So if you're feeling this way and you're kind of battling your own patterned logic right now in your mind, like, Talie, how do I know when I'm supposed to make a decision and how to establish a boundary when I'm fighting two parts of myself, my mind and my body? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so welcome everybody to the void after the boundary, why it hurts, how to exit it, and what you're actually releasing. Plus, a bonus section on the three main archetypes that you want to look out for and especially use those boundaries around. So, real boundaries don't just protect you, they rewrite your nervous system's relationship to intimacy. And what you kind of feel in the aftermath of setting a boundary isn't just excuse me, it's the collapse of a version of you that was survived by maneuvering and contorting yourself to try to meet people who can no longer pace with you. And people think that boundary is like a no, or a moment of empowerment or a clean act of self-respect, but through a QP lens, it's an energetic severance of embedded identity roles. And I talk about codependent loops and how boundaries and loose boundaries are invariably very much connected to codependent loops in some way. And they're also connected to attachment styles. You'll find that an avoidant will be attracted to an anxious attacher. Someone who craves connection, has to be connected all the time, need to connect, need. The avoidant type will find that literally like repulsive. Just why are you trying to connect all the time? Just like shoulders up to the ears, and you want to reject it because it feels so foreign, which is kind of combined with a hyper independent pattern. You're going to see a lot of people who run an avoidant pattern that are hyper independent, incredibly self reliant, and are so good at being on their own, but they have this loose boundary thing because they're people pleasing a bit or they're being over responsibility, and that's how they collapse into codependency. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but just follow the bouncing ball with me here because everything is related. As you know, if you've been following this working and tracking this work enough, you're going to know that every pattern loops in a bundle. It's not just a singular isolated pattern that we're working with here, a frequency distortion pattern. They're looped together. So like say, let me just go on a little tangent here. Let's say, for example, you have a anxious attachment. Okay, an anxious attacher will have very loose boundaries, almost none, and they'll be the type that will constantly and always seek to have connection. They will overshare to connect. They will shrink themselves in public. They will perform. These are big time performers. They chameleonize themselves in social settings, or they'll say nothing, or they'll create alliances, or they won't stand up for themselves, or there'll be something about them that feels a little bit off, like they're kind of fake. You're like, why didn't you just tell her? Like, why didn't you have the conversation right then and there? Like, why are you not calling that behavior out? And then you'll be met with like, yeah, I will. It just has to be the right time. Total fawn response. That's a nervous system shutdown response. So that type of choreography where someone is constantly trying to make sure that they're going to be safe in every single environment at the expense of self-erasing is massive level fawn. Those are the anxious attachers. Those are the folks who are desperate to connect. These are the ones that have incredibly loosey-goosey, ooey boundaries, and they're going to attach themselves to avoidance, who are strong, hyper independent, intellectually stimulated. Usually they run very high levels of intellect, and they'll bypass heart space and go right into the power drive of their body, like solar plex driven, and they're typically really ambitious. So look out for those two dynamics interacting with one another. So, obviously there's more layers here. Yeah, atrophied feminine energy, an amplification of masculine energy. That would be a really good example of someone who's an avoidant attacher. One of those energies are going to be imbalanced. There's going to be a hyper drive. And then the anxious attacher has that same type of imbalance, but manifests in a different way. So I say all of this because you're going to start to see through people's behavior. This is what this work is about, is seeing through the hidden patterns that are shaping your reality. It's not just forensically looking and understanding what patterns are, it's actually seeing this stuff play out in real life. So when I say this is all about, through QP lens, the myth of the clean break, when someone finally says, no, that's my boundary, I said no. Yes, that is an affirmative kind of action, but underneath, or what's happening behind that no, or that like moment of empowerment, or that moment where I'm going to have some self-respect for myself, is if it's not followed up with action, or if you don't really mean it, you're going to actually recurse with that pattern that you think you're setting, that boundary that you think you're setting. It's like a false boundary. That's what that, let's say that's how the energy or that pattern is, or let's say how the universe is seeing that pattern, the intelligence around you is seeing that pattern. It's almost like a psych. Like, no, I don't no. But if the body isn't registering that no, like if it's really not signaling that no, you actually just recursed that pattern even stronger. So if you're up against a boundary right now and you're up against following through with a boundary, you're going to have to see this one all the way out because you're energetically severancing a lot of embedded identity roles. You're actually kind of reliving all of the different versions of how you maneuvered yourself, turned yourself into Gumby. Like you're going to see the dance that you played. You're going to see all the times where you actually kind of negotiated yourself, and inside of that negotiation is, though those are all like phantom layers that run in your system, and it's like deleted cookies off of your cache on a website that didn't get all the way cleared out. You may have deleted the boundary in your mind, but there's all this back end junk that hasn't been handled yet. And so that's why I was like, it's a psychosomatic process. You got to pull this stuff through the body. Once you actually affirmatively do it, like you really move into taking ownership of your part, you kind of reverse engineer why pattern setting is so hard for you, why you're self-erasing, why you're negotiating so much, and you really drill into that pattern for yourself and you get clear, you start to terminate a lot of field contracts that your system signed unconsciously. You're going to get really, really aware of it. Use the pattern exercise, the pattern superhero exercise that I have. If you haven't downloaded that yet, please do so. It's free, or you can join the Healers Hub. We talk a lot about this. We're going to be talking a lot more about this in this month's upcoming call in terms of boundaries and what they actually look like and all of the hidden ways that we negotiate our value. So moving into negotiating the value in the Healers Hub of this month's membership. The other thing that you're looking to do when you really reverse engineer your patterns, like why do I feel so tight in my body around this person? Why am I angry? Where am I holding resentment? That's going to be a really clear indicator that there is hidden contracts, hidden field agreements that your system signed unconsciously, that you are recursing in a dynamic, okay, in a type of very specific sequence with the person, and that you know it's karmic. When it's hysterical, it's historical. If it's just really pulling on you and you're not sure what to look at, the best way to do is take a look at, go back as far as you want, like let's say the last 6 or 7 months or 12 months, and audit the relationship that you have with the person, or audit the relationship you have with your job, okay, how you're showing up in your job. Audit your relationship that you have with money. Money has boundaries, okay? Your job has boundaries. This bleeds into every aspect of your life. Go and reverse engineer your relationships with sex, your relationship with partners. How have you shown up? Where do you give yourself away? Where do you abandon? And then start there. If you just ask yourself those two questions in every single area of your life will fully, fully start to clarify very, very quickly. You will start to clean these things up. You will start to find the holes in your behavior, how you are, creating your reality from patterns that you can't all the way see yet. And a lot of you guys come to me, Talie, why does this keep happening? Because there is recursion rebound. If you don't know what that is, go and listen to that podcast of why we repeat patterns. I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago. Okay, there's recursive rebound happening because there's unconscious scripts that you're still running, and or you are consciously buying back into a pattern that you're actively trying to delete, and or you haven't followed through on the pattern yet. There was something in you where you're like 99.9% there, and then there's a 0.1% of you that's not all the way sure yet. And if you're not all the way sure about clearing out a pattern and you haven't fully pulled it through the body, then you'll have a rebound on it. And or as a final, it had all of the information that you've cleared, all of the work that you've done, all the heavy lifting hasn't been pulled through the body enough yet. And so it's getting backlogged in your system. It's in usually, cervical, okay? It's all going to be in the cervical spine, the occiput, where the skull taps into and connects to the brainstem, everything that's basically grown first when you're a baby in utero. Like, just for funsies, what is your heart rate right now? Like, just check that. Check your pulse and slow everything way, way down. And when you actually tune into that as quickly as you can, just a pulse, immediately the field changes. The air reorganizes around you, and you tune into a different, let's say, blueprint almost instantly, literally almost instantly. So when you're clearing patterns, okay, and you're looking for all these flags, how come this pattern isn't closing? I thought I already did I've done all this work on this, and this. Like, Talie, I've worked on this, and this. Why is this still happening? Audit those questions and really, really audit. You're gonna see very clearly when you start connecting the dots backwards where you've negotiated yourself still, despite doing all of the heavy lifting on clearing the patterns. Somewhere in you still feels guilty or responsible. So when we're doing this, we're rupturing relational geometry. Like, where you were still stabilizing the axis for the dynamic to work. So if you just look at geometry, right? You're a geometric structure, you're constantly sending out a signal, you're interacting with someone else, you're creating a different type of energetic alchemy. It pings, it zings, it does all these different things, and your field gets disrupted. Okay, your nervous system gets shot. People get flattened, they can't hold the expansion that they're desperately trying to seek. And so they collapse into it. Okay, then you collapse into the dynamic of the pattern. And that's why things rebound. They recurse because we can't hold contradiction very well as a collective. We really cannot hold paradox. And reality is like a cosmic joke of being able to hold paradox without collapsing into it with every single pattern. Like, reverse that 10 seconds and go re-listen to that. So that's bars. I was like, I'm gonna have to listen to that and put that in something because I was like, that's exactly what reality is. It's our inability and or our mastery of being able to hold contradiction without collapsing into the pattern. So most people mistake relational withdrawal for, when you set a boundary, let's say with a person, a family member. I've talked about going into no contact before. I've moved into no contact before. And um, they think about withdrawal as like, a punishment, but it's a structural collapse of a co-authored pattern. Somewhere in you had that agreement, and the other people that you're like trying to set a boundary with are in on that agreement too, consciously or unconsciously, knowingly, unknowingly. But I want to talk about quickly, and then I'll go back to I'll complete the loop of what is happening at frequency level, like dimensionally, and then I'll move it back into the body. But I want to talk about the patterns that we go through. First, there's this grief. Okay. Like, imagine having to sever a relationship that's been really, really important to you, whether or not that's with an ex or a partner, or you're getting divorced, you're separating out, a friendship, a family member. There's a longing, okay, that happens. There's a big grief when you set a boundary there. You absolutely move through a vacancy, you move through a void, and that void, okay, was held. Like, who was holding together the relationship that was keeping that structure where the void now lives together? Likely it was the person who had the capacity their to hold paradox more, okay, without collapsing into it, who had the higher level resonance, okay, and or who had more capacity to hold more things. Okay. They had a bigger container, more conditioned nervous system. So this is what I talk about just as a sidebar. When you actually start moving into this work, I work a lot with the black sheep and the IPs and the folks who have been misunderstood in their family, those who are very, very sensitive. They know something is wrong. There's a miss between their experience in life and how they're showing up. They know that there's a gap. And those who are finding this work, for sure, you can relate already. But I I know you guys because you're the ones who are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. You're the pleasers, you're the fixers, the over responsibility. over responsible one. It's okay. I got it. I'm going to clean this up for the line, and then my life will get better, right? Like if I do this, I'm going to get my cake, right? Yeah, no, that's not how this works because it's just a resonance and a singularity game. It's a coherence game. Consciousness is coherence recursion, or you can say it's recursive sentience. Okay. So it's a structured interiority aware of itself that's experiencing itself as a system. And so your coherence and how you are, let's say, how you're recursing with your own coherence, meaning awareness begets more awareness. The more aware you are, the easier your life is, the less you surround yourself with people who are a mess. Okay. You're just not going to take difficult people or dramatic people in your life. You're also not going to attract that to you. You know, for example, if you're not running victim pattern, okay, but you still have, like, you've really worked through victim pattern. And I'm talking like down to you used to be the person who would constantly get it injured. No, I don't know. I tripped, I broke my thing, I fell off my bike, I had this happen, I got mugged, I got my car broken into when I went here. Whenever I go and to, a beach in a foreign country, all the foreign dog, all the feral dogs and animals chase me, like down to the victim. If you've worked through that pattern so much, you'll see how it will be absolutely intolerable for you to be around it. And if this is some of your family members or friendships that you've had for a really long time, and then you feel the guilt of having to cut that off, this is for you. You're mourning the loss of what was and the loss of what you hoped it might become, the loss of your relationship not pacing. So your nervous system essentially had to brace and rehearse how you were going to connect with this person. Like, oh my God, it's been so long. I'm so sorry we haven't been able to connect. There's always a reason for that. There's the energy just doesn't lie, especially now, especially with the frequencies that are coming into the planet and where we're headed as a collective. Like, shit is breaking down. Okay. Systems are breaking down around us at a rapid, rapid rate, happening so fast. So, you're mourning the fact that you negotiated yourself for a really long time. You're mourning the fact that you really miss the dynamic, okay? Missing the way that you used to connect. You're missing the growth, okay? You're moving into a person you kind of can't, that hasn't landed yet, let's say, and you feel like you're growing alone. You miss the fact that you gave up a lot of time, likely trying to make relationships work where you knew they weren't working, but it's okay. We're like, when this person's on, they're on, but when they're not, they're not. And I just got to navigate through the knots and then love them through it, quote unquote, love them through it. And then we'll be fine on the other side. If that loving them through it is causing you to like lose your hair and have an endocrine system shutdown and nervous system frazzle and deplete your energy, if you feel that depleted with somebody, baby girl, baby boy, it's time to take a look at that. That is not natural. Doubt and guilt. This is what's going to come up next. The what ifs creep in. Was it too harsh? Did I cut them off too soon? Like, ugh. Okay. You're gonna battle your mind. But there's an aspect of your body that just took an enormous exhale. And the truth is, if there was any kind of edge to the boundary that you set, it's because it had chandeliered. You bottled it so much, you pushed it down so much, you negotiated yourself so much that it just exploded. Likely there was some kind of explosion. And so the projection, let's say you don't feel like you handled a certain boundary well, or that there was too much projection, or there was unresolved resentment on your end, it's okay. Okay, it's just love yourself through the process of having yourself harder, because that's what a boundary is. Boundary is having yourself so hard that you take care of yourself no matter what, no matter who it is. And then the universe, your reality around you reverberates and reflects that back to you. So you, like, physically, your field will deter. It won't even attract those types of people to you. These very dramatic, grabby, needy, all of that. No, 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 no. That doesn't even come to you. Yes, there's going to be a period of time when a lot of the fat gets cut out. Okay. You got to cut out like a lot of the static in your field, especially now. And it's going to happen anyway, the more you do this work. Your field is going to become more clarified. You're going to re-render and depixelate at a very, very fast rate, even though that's going to be individuated. And believe me, your body will let you know what the hell it needs. And if you ignore it, you'll know that you've been negotiating or you've been pushing yourself, and then something catastrophic will happen. There will be a catalyzing moment, which I talked about in the book, where you're like, fuck, I thought I really had a handle on this, and I don't. Like, I have been brought to my knees, and these patterns will do that. So you will move through doubt and guilt, right? Nodding along here. And then there will be fear, because now you're in this loud, empty void, and the void is loud, and it is also eerily quiet. And then you're going to start thinking, like, what if this is it? What if I'm just alone now? What if the discomfort of the old dynamic was actually better than how I'm feeling now? Like, I'd rather just settle for that. It's easier. Mm-mm. That fear is very seductive, and it's going to tempt you to like rescind the boundary, justify, or fill it in some way. I know because I went through this. And if you're really good at like finding 90,000 ways to look at a single idea, okay, you're going to find a negotiation in there. Trust me. If you want to make something kind of work-ish, you're going to find a negotiation in there. And that's just that self erasure is just going to start that of aggregate, that 1%, that 0.001% every single day is just going to take a little piece away from you every single time. And that crumb cannot be made into a cookie anymore. When people don't, when you're getting nourished. You really know. And you know when it's reciprocal. And if you're really playing a high stakes game, reciprocal love and boundaried connection is the baseline. And there might be few and far between right now, but you will have that. Trust me. Trust me. The next thing you're going to feel is anger. I know because I'm going through it. This is part of my agreement with my highest self and pure source consciousness is that I go through things or I witness them in depth. I go incredibly deep into the idea, reverse the architecture, and then share it with you. So the next thing you're going to feel is anger. Okay, this is the righteous rage of being the one who had to actually set the boundary in the first place. And what you're really angry is that you negotiated yourself that long. Um, and you're angry that they couldn't meet you, that they have an inability to take any kind of real ownership, that they're forcing you to kind of play executioner, or that you were responsible for doing a lot of the emotional labor. Okay. That the emotional labor landed in your lap again. And that's where you're kind of pissed. And I get it. So now let's get into the body. So, the somatic anatomy of the void. Let's talk about what happens after you set a boundary. Okay. You're going to negotiate with your mind. Your mind is going to fight you. Okay. From a frequency perspective, you've broken down the already very wobbly architecture and geometry that you were holding, yours and theirs. You were holding your own self and them at the same time when it's not reciprocal. And what you're actually saying to the field is, this no longer works for me. I'm not going to continue to shrink myself to try to make this relationship work no matter what. It has to be a no matter what. Because someone who has a tremendous amount of self-respect, okay, doesn't allow them, they do not allow these types of inconsistencies or these types of people to continue to stay in their life. And or they set the boundary and they are okay with allowing the reverberation and the follow through of whatever, and the fallout and the breakdown and the hysteria of whatever that pattern or that boundary creates to move through the family. And it's messy and it's not good. And it might be explosive, but it has to be honest. So start there. The emotional mastery and having your nervous system as you continue to grow, okay, and evolve with people that you love in your life, that's where maturity comes in. Maturity is going to help you have yourself, hold yourself in a different way, be able to maintain your level head, your cool, be able to stay calm, catch what someone said to you faster. And no, I don't agree with that. Don't talk to me that way. Actually, that doesn't feel good what you just said to me. Actually, I don't really like that. That doesn't feel good to me. This doesn't feel in resonance. You know what? Do you have a minute? Can we just put a pin in that? I want to just look at something really fast, and then I want to come back and we talk about that later? Yeah, let's put a pin in that. Right? Hey, I want to circle back and just have a touch base conversation with you because here's what I'm present to. Earlier, you said something that didn't sit well with me, right? Just we learn new language for how to have ourselves. We learn new language around how to have hard conversations. And that's living an honest life, is being able to walk through and have extremely hard conversations kind of all the time because they're not hard. They're just not going to necessarily put any person who's engaging in that conversation, quote unquote, in the best light. It's not like, woo, love and light. Let's just go do this amazing closeout circle and we're going to do a bunch of medicine. We're going to really work through some hard stuff and it's going to be so much healing. Okay, that's not grounded. That's not reality. Okay, that's fantasy and disassociation. And that will probably be for another podcast. But when you set that boundary, there is going to be a void. So let's look at the like kind of somatic anatomy of the void. Okay, it's not silence, it's signal withdrawal. Okay, it's not loss, it's essentially a re-rendering. And your body doesn't grieve what was, it grieves what it had to become to maintain what was. So the element looks like this: the role you played, and then the nervous system entrainment of like fawn, stabilizer. Let me try to always soften. Let me make sure I meet them a certain way. Let me be the translator. Okay, let me make sure I'm always gentle with them because they can't hear what I'm saying. And so I will try to therapize them, or I will parentify my family, okay, but they won't hear me, and then they'll use that and weaponize that against me. So you're looking at the element, which is the role you played, and then the energetic and then the somatic layer, how it landed in your body. So if you find yourself constantly fawning, it's because you're working really, really hard. Or if you're in hyper flight and kind of hysterical, you're talking about somebody, you're usually with somebody who's really, really fond. Okay. They're just shut down because you're working really, really hard. So if you're working really hard, if you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting because you have more capacity, more maturity, more life experience, whatever, okay, and they bring a certain nuance to the table that just speaks, gets you curious enough to keep paying, or there's so much history that you're unwilling to kind of let that part go. That's what you want to look at. Listen to your body. How does your nervous system like feel around that person? How does it feel? And if you drop into your body more around a person, right? If you just feel like you can totally let your guard down, that's a really good indicator that you're in a safe place. So there's also this like limbic hope loop that happens in the body, which is like the fantasy of repair. Well, it's fine. Like this is just what we do. We're just in different seasons. We'll come back together in like a year or like 6 months. I'll probably hear from her or him or them or whatever, and it'll be fine. So that limbic hope loop, maybe they'll meet me halfway this time. Okay, that's kind of a fantasy. Let me give my nervous system an elixir because it's been so set up for disappointment its whole life that if I just give it a little bit of an elixir, I won't bottom out completely. That's what that is. So see if you move into like kind of this limbic hope loop after you set a boundary. There's energetic tethering. So this element here is like field entanglement via attention, responsibility, or over availability. So what's actually happening when you are collapsing in a field is this. They'll meet me halfway this time. So you have the fantasy of repair. There's energetic tethering, meaning like you'll just make yourself available because you can. You'll be over responsible. You'll be over available, and then resentful after. And your body will tighten, and you won't quite notice it because, let's say, you're really stable or you have a really regulated nervous system and you can just handle it. So you just do, right? Those little subtle moments of self-erasure are when you're negotiating. So then you've got this time investment, okay? It's like this sunk cost fallacy of like, I can't, how can I explain this? There's a time investment that creates the negotiation, okay? It actually is the energy, it's the excuse. Okay, that pattern wants to delete out of your system. It's going to scan your system and look for, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Okay, and then it's gonna latch on to that little bit of part of you that says, I have literally given her so much of my time, or I've given this person so much of my time. Like I spent 20 years with this person. I spend 10 years every single day co-living with somebody. We've been dysfunctionally co-regulating off of our nervous systems completely enmeshed, and now I just don't know what to do. It's easier for me to just stay in the relationship right now than for me to leave and have myself and trust that the field will reorganize around it because there's money, we have the kids, etc. And I know I get it. Decoupling and separating out of relationships that no longer work for you are tricky and they're nuanced and there are very real elements at play. That said, that time investment piece, that one thing that says, I have spent so much time with this person that I'm just gonna make it work now because I'm not gonna waste all that time for nothing. That right there, that little hook is basically this chrono emotional sunk cost fallacy. I cannot lose this time. I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to make this shit work. Like I can. I have all these tools now. This person seems to be making some progress. We're going to make it work. Okay, great. Just look at that. Pay attention to the body because the body it's going to be all in the chest and you're going to hold all that grief in your lungs. So look at the people who are moving through grief. Okay. Look, just public figures. Look at people who are moving through grief, who have stress, who have a lot of pressure on them. Pay attention to their shoulders and pay attention to their lungs when they get sick. If they get a sinus infection, if that sinus infection moves to their lungs, they're trying to move through grief. That's your body's way of saying, like, I need some help over here. Like processing these patterns out of the physical body. It's definitely not easy, I know, but just hang in there, you guys. So then there's the identity fragmentation, which is like kind of one of my favorite things to talk about besides patterns is patterns that shape identity. So all of this is basically performing safety instead of embodying it. So the projected self, which is probably for a whole other podcast, but I've talked a lot about variations of what this is, but when you're in a relationship where you're having to do a lot of just choreography to make it work, there's a lot of sequencing, bouncing around, you're signaling, everyone's trying to be in a flow. You've got a good 6 months, right? Like, oh no, we're in a good period right now. It feels really good. Oh yeah, I mean, he's stopped drinking for like a week and then he was right back into it again, and I just don't know what to do anymore, stuff like that. So you're actually having to hold up projected selves. You're holding up a false image and a false hope and a false fantasy of a dynamic that you are trying to return to. It's like relational safety that the body is desperately trying to reference off of. So I talked about reference points in the books, okay? You have a reference. We were so happy during this time period, or I was so happy during this time period, and that will be related to uh, the past, and that has greatly informed your nervous system and has greatly informed the sequences that you're running, the energy that you're putting out. Okay, it's animating that previous information is animating your nervous system and is animating the blueprint that you're running now. And that is what you're living off of. You're living off of the past or the projection of what you are hoping to move towards. Okay. As a couple, as a friendship, as a job, as a role, you're holding on to both those things. But right now, it doesn't feel like that. And it hasn't felt like that for a while. And you're on edge all the time. Yeah. So this is field level unhooking. Like when you hold a boundary and you really start to clean up your life and move through the bullshit, your body is going to reject any kind of relational safety that is a projected self. It's going to reject that. So you won't get promoted, okay, even though you've been working for it for like 15 years, right? Because if that job holds a resonance, no, hold on before everyone panics. That promotion that you were gunning for, okay, holds a resonance that is going to essentially encourage you to further abandon yourself. Like it's total and complete enslavement, let's say, okay, just as a hypothetical. If you've been working for a promotion, or if you've been working to become, let's say, a partner of a law firm, or if you've just been working to get out of debt, okay, for 15 years, or move through a single pattern for 5 years or 1 year, or whatever it is, and you get presented with opportunities that are going to negotiate any aspect of the highest of the person that you're trying to become, if it's going to negotiate it too much, then it likely will not happen, number one. Or two, you're going to force it and override it to happen. And then that pattern continues to recurse. If you're making decisions from a false projected self and you're doing active work to collapse anything around false projected selves, those two things cannot live in the same field. You have to make a choice. So, are you moving towards a life that is congruent, that is singular, okay, that is easy, where things wrap around you and they come to you with way more ease? Are you moving towards having undeniable and unshakable access to yourself, where no matter what happens, you're going to sign up for all of it, where you're doing meaningful work that you're creating, where you are like you're deeply fulfilled and you're deeply proud of, you have relationships that you love around you, you have plenty of resources to be able to facilitate all these things. You feel like you're co-creating. You feel really safe in your body. You don't feel tight. You feel like no matter where you go, you can be fully resourced, or you can kind of navigate the field and feel safe doing so, no matter where you are in the world, culturally, logistically, linguistically, etc. That's the type of, like, if you want to live towards that type of life, like, how do you want to be inside of it? How do you want to live inside of the reality that you're creating? Because most of you have big gaping holes that you want to actually get clear on. Like this section of my life, I tell you, this section right here, like romance for me is a mess, or my finances are a mess, Talie, or it's kind of all a mess, but I know there's a part of me that knows, like, if I continue to get access to myself, the rest of it will sort itself out. So I've said this before, the version of you or the life that you want to create cannot happen overnight. Pick one pattern to focus on. Okay. I just want to focus on access to myself, and I have to stop people pleasing. Those two things. And then do the energy work around it, do frequency work around it, because circling all the way back to the very beginning part of this episode when I talked about everything happens in bundles, believe that. And if it's a core pattern that you came here to override, like I am absolutely going to I'm going to get all my power in this life. I'm going to know what that is. Okay. Or I am 1000% going to get access to myself. I'm going to be able to see, hear, feel, know myself so deeply, so intimately that I will never abandon myself again. That that single pattern, like that declaration, okay, or like I will receive abundance in all direction in this life. Like I am going to have it all without self-sacrifice. You make those types of declarations and you stay consistent and you don't quit before the miracle, right? You really, really show up that way, it will happen, especially right now. But people's lives get good and they quit. They get good and they quit. But if you're out here to live an honest life, like if you're out here really to swing for the fences and not shrink and feel disempowered, it's definitely not going to be easy, but it'll be honest. And you will have to set boundaries and it'll feel like violent, high holy fury. And it will feel glorious. And you will have these deep moments of presence that shock you and surprise you that are so deeply nourishing. You like it lasts for the moment might be gone and fleeting, but the memory of it is just like ripples into lifetimes. And I've had moments like that, and I know some of you have had it too. So if you're out here trying to like swing for the fences and get really clear about your life and do meaningful work that you love and have people recognize that, okay, and have amazing relationships around you and be willing to make more risks, take more risks, then you can't live off of false self. You will get challenged, you will fracture, okay? And your work is to identify where you can't hold paradox, work on it, learn how to hold it in that area without collapsing into it, and then learn how to hold it without collapsing into it in a body. Run it through the system. You can do that. The field is instant. It is instant. Shift, 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 boom, boom, boom. Like I've been in, 3 countries now and 3 different cultures, wildly different cultures, 3 different languages. And the things that unlocked, like, hey, you wouldn't happen to be available now? Like, boom, Instagram, DM, looking for this, or running around this corner and finding this thing and walking over here, and just things unfolded instantly, thought about it instant. And I was like, that is wild to think about it, to see it, and then physically experience it almost instantly because there's no attachment is the feedback loop. So look at the feedback loop that's happening in your life. Where do you throw yourself away? Where are you giving your patterns away, right? Or where are you negotiating your patterns and giving yourself away? Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is the 3 kind of why you leave drained, these type of 3 patterns that you see in people. Let's move into kind of this bonus part of this episode around these types of archetypes. So the first archetype here, let me take a drink of water and then come back to you guys in a second here. Okay. The first one you want to look at is the perpetual deflector. This is kind of what I'm calling it's always somebody else's fault. Okay. So if you're looking at somebody who cannot take reflection, then that is a huge red flag. So at the core, it's always somebody else's fault. Okay. Just keep that as a tagline for the perpetual deflector. This pattern externalizes blame. Okay. They refuse to take responsibility, or they're very dismissive. Look for that. Look for the dismissiveness. The yes, I got your voice message. Thank you for the reflection. But it's like if you get that acknowledgement, it's a miracle, or it feels disingenuous. Pay attention to that. So the nervous system in this case with the perpetual deflector is wired to avoid shame at all costs. So accountability feels like a total and complete annihilation. It equals full collapse. And it's a very disembodied way to experience. So someone who can't look and and like really take reflection or take wholehearted accountability is in avoidance, disassociation, they're unstable, or they don't think it was their fault. They're immature. So the field impact of that is they create endless loops of gaslighting, scapegoating, and distortion. If you have ever felt drained because someone demanded you explain, apologize, or repair something that wasn't even yours, you've kind of been caught in a deflector's field. So it's toxic because without ownership, there is literally no recalibration. And if you find yourself in a dynamic with this person, then you will likely be in variations of a codependent or a psychic codependent dynamic, okay, where there will be no ownership or partial ownership, and very little recalibration, or if you do recalibrate, it's because there's just been enough time that the charge dissipates on its own and you guys come back together, or that someone, or that you've lowered your resonance, or that the resonance between both parties has lowered and you've been able to rematch up. So you're really just going to get repetition at that point. The next one, okay, the next archetype is the chronic victim performer. Okay. My pain is your obligation to hold, to hear, and then to restabilize. Ugh. Okay. Hate it. This one weaponizes suffering as currency. Okay. Look at our collective right now. Who is running the chronic victim performer? Okay, it extracts attention and care and power through collapse. It brings people into their world constantly. And because they, let's say, they have high level empathy, or they have no problem asking for what they need to a point where they demand it. Okay, they get very, very, very needy. You feel like, okay, well, maybe I'm just not a good friend. Maybe I just need to be more compassionate, or I'll listen to them. I'm going to hear what you have to say. That's a fawn response. Like pay attention where you override your own body, okay, to constantly hold the other person. They constantly have to be met. They constantly have to be discharged. Okay, my pain is your obligation, like I said, to hold, to match, to meet, to re-signal. I need your help to stabilize. I really need your help right now. Like a lot of that, if you have somebody in your life who takes up a lot of that type of space, pay attention to that. There's some boundaries that are needed. So the field impact here is like it's a black hole. Okay. Coherence cannot stabilize because empathy gets hijacked, and it gets hijacked into obligation. So what looks like intimacy is actually a siphon, and you'll get drained. Like what I talked about earlier in the episode where things chandelier. It's like you will literally pile in, you'll negotiate, and then you'll just snap. This is what I'm talking about. It siphons your energy. You're gonna get drained. It's toxic because the connection here turns into coercion. And this is why it's narcissistic. It's malignant narcissism, and it's very nuanced, and it's very sneaky. And the more the system collapses for care, the less it trusts the care it receives. Okay. So the more you collapse into that dynamic, the less you actually can receive love and care from others for yourself. That's how crazy that pattern actually becomes. So if you have a terrible time receiving, but you're amazing at showing up for other people, that's because you're hanging out. There's some chronic victim performer going on here, and there's a payoff for you that you're getting as a result of it, right? If you just, it's like, don't leave me. So, but I'll just take enough so you don't leave me. That's an over responsibility pattern. I see this a lot with the oldest. I see this a lot with the golden child. I also see this with scapegoats. And attachment styles run like neck and neck with these types of archetypes. The next one is like the control masquerader. I'm only safe if I'm in charge. So, ironically, the control masquerader and the chronic victim performer switch roles. Like you'll have one person that can be all three, right? They'll just morph themselves. Like each archetype will just take shifts, like certain days. Oh, she's going to control within an inch of her life. And then I am under control. I feel really good. I'm in flow because I have everything under control. And then boom, collapse, can't hold it, right into the victim martyr. Or then boom, I'm in the victim martyr. You've helped me stabilize that. No, I don't feel that. I don't feel like we're imbalanced. Right back into deflection. They're going to just run through these different archetypes over and over and over again. This one is kind of doesn't necessarily have a terror of vulnerability, but there is a bit of that. It can go two ways. The control masquerader will control to maintain safety because usually there was trauma early on. The body doesn't know what feels safe. It's created all of these strategies in order to hold up the architecture of control as safety. So they will constantly seek connection in order to feel that way. They cannot regulate on their own. They have to have co-regulation around them. So, and then the other aspect of that, like the other side of the coin of the control masquerader, will be they find like terror. They find a like actual terror of vulnerability, like kind of hidden under the way that they micromanage, dominate, and it's very manipulative, but it's kind of subtly, not necessarily overtly manipulative. So the nervous system here is coded for hypervigilance. Okay? So unpredictability equals danger. So control becomes the substitute for safety. This is a very heavy, compressed pattern to be around. The field impact, okay? Pay attention to the heaviness of a field, how much it compresses. It's like armor plating over the field. And there's usually contracts involved with all of these, okay? Flow gets suffocated, and everyone else is like kind of forced to regulate around their rigidity. When someone is in that much self-containment and it's so prickly to be around, it's gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's sharp and edged. It's really sharp and edgy. And someone who is in a lot of fear will move into that sharp edge really, really fast. So look for these types of archetypes in your life. Who runs these? Do you have a boss? Okay. So let me just go through layered breakdowns really fast. Okay. So the deflector treats truth like a threat. Okay. They're going to push it away. The victim performer will confuse care with collapse. Okay. Believing they'll only be loved kind of if they are hurting. They don't know how to connect otherwise. Or if they do know how to connect when they're stable, it's because they've co-regulated with someone else. The controller mistakes control for safety. It's like the sexiest illusion there is to have that much control over your life, tightening their grip every time vulnerability tries to surface. Or if it does, they can't take the reflection in that moment if they've collapsed into too much of a fawn response, and they'll move right back into deflection because of the shame. So shame is a very large driver here, and the layered breakdowns um, here for the deflector would be the cognitive layer will be rationalizes, they spin logic, and then they eject blame. The emotional layer will be shame quickly mutates into anger or indifference. And then somatically, you're going to get like TMJ. Okay, micro flight or fight tension. Behaviorally, you're going to see the gaslighting, denial, scapegoating, and the field effect of that will just be static distortion. And it drags others into like proof cycles. Prove it. Prove it. Give me an example. I'm going to need you to give me an example of that. Big deflector. If you notice, narcissists move into devaluation whenever they're in a uh, dynamic, okay? An indifference with their partner, or they're looking to move through some type of issue, they're going to move quickly into deflection and devaluation. And it's very, very painful to be around somebody like that because you just get erased. You'll never get validated. So the victim performer, look out cognitively, life is against me, or whenever they really are like, I'm really up myself, like really up against myself right now, girl, or I am really up against my work and my boss, or it's always this, or, you know, it's just life is against them. It's always tough. Emotionally, resentment recycled as leverage. It's just bum out and resentment. So the victim performer is really rife in the field. The deflector is really, really rife in the field. Somatically, look for a collapsed chest, okay? And rounded shoulders. Look for like hyper weight gain around the mid area. This is where a lot of disempowerment lives. Okay, that extra uh just extra weight around the waist. Okay, people self-soothing with food, they're medicating themselves through SSRIs, through behavioral patterns that aren't good for them. You could just rehearsing around addiction, avoidance, cannabis, I mean, you name it. Behaviorally, it's going to be there's going to be guilt tripping going on here, and then manipulation. So pay attention for that behavior with the victim performer. The field effect of this is kind of this black hole, okay, where it's like rescue, but never resolution. It's going to feel like a pull. And people who have a lot of trauma and a lot of victim patterning going on will control within an inch of their life. And you will get conversations or you will get calls that just are like check-ins of literally what their day was like. They'll give you a time. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. I'm spending time with this person. Then we're going to do this. We went to this location. Then I have to go grocery shopping. And it's like micro details of someone's life. You're like, okay, well, this isn't really connection. This is just like a status update, right? Are your relationship status updates? Are you actually dropping in and having real conversations? So the control masquerader, cognitively, it's going to look like hyperanalysis and distrust. This person is going to be very cynical. They're not going to trust anyone, or they're going to look for the worst in a scenario. There's no half empty. I mean, half full, it's half empty. They're sus kind of all the time. The emotional layer here is anxiety masked as superiority. You see this a lot with intellectual uh, snobbery, I guess, or intellectual elitism that's going on right now, especially in the political sphere or people who talk about the political sphere with colleges breaking down and what's going on with Harvard and stuff. But you're going to see a lot of that anxiety masked as superiority and intellectual superiority through people who have control patterns. So rigid posture, clenched gut, uh, hyper biohackers. They have a little bit of an edge to them. There's something about them that you can't really trust. You can tell by their make, like with women, I can tell the way they put their makeup together. I can tell the way that they dress. I was like, oh wow, a lot of control going on. Okay. Behaviorally, it's again micromanagement, domination, or I'm going to pick you up at this time and then we're going to go here. Someone who's hyper scheduled and wants to hyper schedule you into their hyper scheduling. Like that never feels good to my nervous system, so I don't even run that. So the field is again, it's a heavy compression and any kind of flow gets suffocated. So with all of this, re-listen to this, take notes. Where can you relate to having these types of people in your life? I know I threw a lot at you, but this is a very loaded episode around boundaries, and it's important to have them. And let me know in the comments what you need clarification on and what your questions are, and I can do some follow-up on them in the next episode. So, as a note, something to remember is if this episode landed with you, if you're starting to see these patterns in yourself or the people around you, remember the work isn't about blame or collapsing into grief or any of the patterns I mentioned earlier, the self-doubt, the negotiating with your own logic. It's about recognition, okay? Because the body remembers the loop, but your field knows how to exit. So all you've got to do is start becoming aware of the details about how you're creating your reality from a pattern perspective based on the quantum psychosomatic framework that I talk about in these episodes. Okay, so your field knows, your oversoul and your intelligence knows. Now it's about bringing all of these things together, collapsing, being able to hold contradiction, okay, hold paradox without collapsing into the pattern itself, and then pulling that intelligence through the body. And that's how you create a bigger container. And you can't do that without being willing to walk through some heavy conversations, some hard ones, and set boundaries because people are actually going to feel the effects of that. And that's okay because you're worth it. And at the end of all of this, when you look like again, you look back and you're like, man, I did some heavy lifting this year. Like it was a year I didn't anticipate. I really didn't know what it was going to look like, but I set some really profound boundaries. I had some really beautiful experiences. I moved through some pretty sticky patterns. I haven't been able to do this and this, and this, but I know that's coming and it will come together. And like piece by piece, you build a life that's more honest, and the field responds to that level of truth. All right, you guys, I'll see you on the next episode. As a note, the Healers Hub is the live call that I do once a month. It is the membership that I have that's live right now. I will be opening up sessions soon, so please look out for that. I'm offering my sessions to people who have been in containers, okay, who have been already into the work, because there's a lot of you guys that are new. You all want sessions, and I love that. I appreciate that. And please continue to grab the book, go on Substack, listen to these podcasts, get a handle of what this work is and see if it's for you, because the sessions are quick and they go quick and they're designed that way on purpose. These are just quick, surgical, no BS. Let's get in there and clear these patterns and get you on your way, because I have everything I need in those 15 minutes. They're surgical clearings. Okay, it's like touch-ups um, on a painting. So if you're interested in getting a session with me, maybe consider getting two the first time if you want more time and you want to be able to ask me questions. Otherwise, get into the Healers Hub, get into this work and in a deeper way in the memberships. And then by the time we get into our individual sessions, you and I can get to deeper work. That is the lowest point of entry right now to be able to work with me. And I answer everybody's questions very thoroughly in the Healers Hub. And that is what I have to say about that. Okay, you guys, look out for programs coming in October. I will be launching something. I can feel it. And I've already gotten a lot of information about it. Nervous system wealth is coming as well. Sessions will be available in a couple of weeks. Connect with me on Substack, connect with me in the Healers Hub. And if you liked this episode, please share it. It helps circulate it, gets more people involved. Like I said, there's 90 countries now listening to it. And I haven't done anything to promote this thing other than try to be very consistent with giving you deep dives every couple of weeks. And please leave a review if that resonates with you. And I will see you all in the next episode. Big love.